Right. So we started in our series last week in Psalm 23, and like I mentioned, if you missed it, you didn't miss much. We just talked about the first line, about how the Lord is our shepherd. And, of course, Psalm 23 is a very familiar passage to a lot of people. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. And then on it goes. And we're going to take this series, that whole psalm, and really break it down and expand it. And as I was thinking this week about the next line, which will bring up this next slide right here, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great when we think of I shall not want, to be people that could truly say that we're wanting nothing. Wanting nothing. But I started to think about that, and as I thought about it, I thought how crazy it is that here we are living in the country that we're living in, which compared to many places around the world has so much. I mean, a lot of us have seen videos and things and standard of living in many places of the world where they don't even have electricity. They don't even have decent water. They don't have, any of the things that they have. And we have so many modern accommodations and everything that we have here. We have so many ways that we connect today, seemingly. In fact, let's put up a picture here which kind of illustrates. I mean, here's how, this isn't necessarily our neighborhood, but there's a lot of blocks that look, we're in the United States of America. And there are blocks around here like that, by the way. And there's different places, and there's housing, and there's, we have a roof over our head, and cars, and all kinds of different stuff that we've got going on. We definitely have cars here in Southern California. No shortage of those, right? Everywhere we go, there's traffic, seemingly at any time. And yet, let's put this next image up. We've got people that are more connected than ever, and yet seem to be more wanting than ever. Isn't that crazy? I mean, we have so many accommodations. We can connect. In fact, right now, today, there are millions of people across our country freaking out. And you know why that is, right? I'm not freaking out, but some of you might be freaking out. TikTok's not working. There are people literally who are having trouble breathing right now. I'm not exaggerating. I wish I was. Now, if you're one of those, we'll pray for you today, okay? Because I get it. It's tough. Because when you're so used to connecting, seeing, doing things and all that, and all of a sudden last night, what time, I don't know, remember what time it was last night, but this message, like screenshots of this message is going viral because suddenly it just doesn't work. And a lot of people just don't know what to do. Now, I will confess I have an addiction in my life, and it is my phone. I'm on it way too much. Way too much. I'm constantly looking at stuff, and I use it for a lot of productive things, but I have to be honest with you, as you should with me as well. A lot of it is not that productive either. I mean, I waste a lot of time. I do. But here we are in a world with all these connections, all these conveniences, everything. I was hearing about the phone yesterday. I saw a little comedy clip that somebody had on about the phone, and it was so true. I was thinking back to when I was younger, which has been a while. And the comedy clip was, all he was doing was saying things that were true. He was mentioning about, you know what? There used to be a time when the phone rang, and you didn't know who it was. And you actually had to run across the house to where it was connected to the wall or sitting on a table and try to pick it up before it stopped ringing. And if you didn't get there in time, I mean, I remember times tripping over things and banging into people trying to get to the phone before it stopped ringing. And if you didn't get there in time, now you had no idea who called. And you had to sit there and wonder and even call up different people. Did you call? Did you just call me? Did you just call me? And everything, trying to figure it out. That's how different it is today. And yet, people are more wanting than ever, even though we have so much stuff. When we look at Psalm 23, and we bring up the next thing it says here, which is, I shall not want. When we look up the original meaning of want, it is missing something that is needed. Okay, so for example, we might get to a point where we are in want of food. Now, there's a difference between just, preferring food and just liking food and really being in wanting food. Food is a necessary thing after a while. In want of water. Needs, things that are completely necessary. All right, things that we actually need, things that we need to satisfy. You see, the problem that we're having today and why so many people are not feeling peace in their life, because that's one of the things that people really want and they need, right, is peace. And maybe you're here this morning and you're saying, I really want peace, but I don't seem to ever have it. I know years ago when I first went to church, because I didn't grow up in church, years ago when I first went to church, that's the first thing that I noticed in some of the people around me is they seemed to have a peace. And I knew that even though I lived in a decent situation at home and I had stuff, and I wasn't necessarily lacking for material things, we weren't wealthy, but at the same time, we weren't dirt poor either. I still did not have peace. I didn't have the peace that they had, that I saw in the people around me. There seemed to be a joy that they had, and that was often missing in my life. I tried to get it. There were happy moments when I would go and try to do things, and I would be around people, and maybe there'd be some party or there'd be some gathering, and I'd have happy moments, but that happiness didn't last. That peace was never there. That joy was often never there. These were things that I needed in life. These were things that people are all looking for in life. And despite all the connections and the technology and the materialism and the shoes and the phones and the tablets and then all the different things we have today, people are still in want more than ever. Hopefully that doesn't describe you, but if it does describe you, I will tell you this. That want can be satisfied and can be filled. And that's what we'll look at this morning. So let's look at some areas this morning. Let's ask the question right now, what is it that you really want? Because a lot of people don't actually know. They really don't. In fact, when we ask that question, you might say to yourself at first, well, what do you mean? Of course I know what I want. Really? Do you? If we were to pin it down and say, what are the three things that you want the most out of life? Pick any three things. Often people don't really know the answer. And the reason for that is because there seems to be so many choices, but we don't want to pick the wrong one. So, for example, using the old example that we think of all the time, if you found a lamp and you rubbed it and out came a genie and they said, grant you 3 wishes. This has been a question that maybe people have been asked through the centuries. What 3 wishes would you want? And no, you can't. One of the wishes can't be for 10 more wishes. And you think, 3 wishes, but then there's this thing, well, wait a minute, which one will really be? Oh, no, that's the wrong wish. That's the wrong wish. And it's hard to really narrow it down. Often in life, we're just chasing one thing after another. Maybe you've been doing that, and yet there's things that are missing. We're never satisfied. There's still an emptiness. There's still not that peace. There's still not that comfort. There's still not that love. There's still an antsiness. You can't even sleep at night because you're tossing and turning. There's an unsettling that's constantly there. There's a void in your heart that seems to never be able to be filled, no matter what you've tried and no matter how you go after it. So what would really satisfy the want of your heart and your soul? Let's look at a few areas this morning. And the first thing we're going to look at is this question that kind of explores what we were just talking about. It's in James chapter 4, verses 1 to 3. He asks a question. He says, what is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Because for many of us today, and many people that we know, this is a lot of their life. There's a lot of quarreling. There's a lot of disagreement. There's a lot of strife. There's a lot of issues. We go out there today in our world around us and we see a lot of anger. I'm sure you've experienced that. Maybe you've experienced it yourself, where people don't get along. There's a lot of, for instance, on our streets, there's a lot of angry drivers out there. Isn't that true? Hey, people honk the horn like so fast. It's like it feels good to honk the horn. It's like they're just waiting for an opportunity to blast the horn at somebody, right? You know, the green light starts at the green light. You're waiting at a light, and all of a sudden it turns green, and you didn't see it right at that moment. Why not? Probably because you're looking at your phone at that second, but I've been there too. And man, there's some people who are right behind us like, yeah, light turned, they didn't move right away. They're just honking the horn. You're not driving fast enough. People go by you, they're yelling at you, they're cutting you off, they're doing all those type of things. There's just a lot of anger out there. Quarrels, fights, maybe in your family, maybe amongst your friends, maybe amongst your coworkers, the people that you're around all the time. A lot of quarreling and fighting. Why are we always so angry? Why are we always so upset? And James, he asks this question and he says, don't they come from the evil desires that war within you? See, part of the wanting that each one of us have in life is that there's often a battle taking place within our own minds, within our own hearts. A battle of not even knowing what we want. In fact, maybe you've had disagreements with people and they even come to you and say, what do you want from me? And then you can't even answer. Because no matter what they would tell you, it still doesn't solve the fact that you're just upset. You're just not happy. Because there's these desires inside of us that seem to not be getting fulfilled no matter what. There's still a want, no matter what we try to do. He goes on here, verse 2. He says, you want the things you don't have. And that's true all the time. We're always looking. Today they say that there's this problem that we have and that we're always comparing. And we do that more and more with the internet now, with social media, with everything we see. Everyone's always posting, right? We do things today, for example, that we never did when I was younger. We take selfies and we post pictures of ourselves all the time. When we were younger, we took pictures of other things. I mean, now it's possible that you have at least 30 pictures of yourself on your own phone. Right? And we're actually posting ourselves, just trying to get noticed in some way. And we're looking at other things, and people are showing all these pictures of, oh, I went here today, or we're on this vacation right now, or we just went and got this vehicle today, or wherever it is, and they're showing all of these things, and we're always comparing and starting to want maybe their stuff or their life or their boyfriend or their husband or their family or whatever it is, that thing that they seem to have that we don't have. And every time we get something and we think we're happy, then we see something else and then we're not happy anymore because we don't have it. He says, so you actually, in some cases, hopefully not you, but you actually will scheme and in some cases even kill to get it. It's pretty extreme, but we see that. How many court cases do we see today of people that literally, because they wanted a different life, actually killed their spouse or killed a relative or did something or just to get rid of them so that they could have the life that they want? Seems crazy. But this want and this desire and this quarreling and this issues and this hunger and this thirst that is inside of us drives sometimes us to do extreme things. He says here, you're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it. So you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want. Notice this, because you don't ask God for it. Now that seems surprising when we first look at that. In fact, we might look at that verse and say, well, why didn't you say so? It's that easy. I just ask for what I want and I get it. Well, that's great. Let me start making the list. Let me start throwing it out there. But there is something else that we need to understand, and that is that our Heavenly Father also knows what's best for us. We need to ask, but we also need to ask in alignment with who He is. Okay, so He knows, for instance, when we ask in confidence, knowing that He knows what we should have and what we shouldn't, when we should have it, how much we should have, all those type of things. All right, so for example, children always want stuff. Right? We have a couple of very young ones in here, and I noticed just the other day, Melody in the back, she was eating something for lunch. And baby PJ, he's just starting to have little bits of food, okay, and all those type of things. And he was all about wanting to get his hand into that bowl. Being I guess, in his mind, probably the mean mom that she was being at that point, although she really wasn't, she didn't let him get his hand in that bowl. She didn't let him eat from that bowl. If he did, he would have not only made a mess, but he would have been extremely sick. So sometimes, as a parent, we know what they should have and what they shouldn't have, and we've got to trust God in that. But the first step, though, is if we're really trying to fulfill what's wanting in our life, instead of trying to find it all the ways that we've been doing it, is we may need to definitely do what it's saying right here. Ask God. You see, knowing what we want, first of all, we have to understand that it comes from knowing what God has created us for. He knows what will fulfill the emptiness of your heart and the void of your heart. And so we need to be asking Him for that peace that passes all understanding and that comfort. Verse 3 tells us that even when you ask, often you don't get it, and this is why. Because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. Now, we all know this. We've seen this in people. We've seen this in children. We've done it ourselves, where we're asking questions and we're asking for things, but our motives are wrong. And we're doing it because we just want it for ourselves, or we're just trying to figure out how to get it for ourselves. And so that's what we've got to be asking ourselves. Okay? And so as we're looking for this peace in our life, and we're trying to fulfill that inside, we have to understand that God knows the desires of our heart and why we're asking. The next thing we're going to look at today is found in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 to 30. How do we fulfill the want in our soul? Jesus gives us an invitation. He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Let's stop with that for just a moment. Let's leave it right there. So as I was thinking in the beginning of the week, when I was thinking about this message, and I was thinking how crazy it was to me that in a nation where we have so much, there's so much want. The thought that came to me was, because exactly what we've just been talking about right now, we're trying to fulfill the wants in all the wrong ways. We need to go to Jesus. What people really need, the only thing that will fulfill that desire, that emptiness in our heart, is Jesus himself. And Jesus gives us the invitation to come to him. Now, how do we do that? Well, the first thing we do that is we do that in prayer. You say, well, maybe I don't know how to pray that well. Do you know how to have a conversation with somebody? The answer is yes. He's waiting for us to come to him. Okay? He gives us this invitation. Now, he mentions some of the people that should be coming to him. Those who are weary and carry heavy burdens. I think that a lot of people fall into that category again. Now, I know for myself that that's often me. What are some of the things that tire us out? Well, part of it is our own life, part of it is our own issues, and part of it is other people's issues too. Okay, a lot of us deal with, in addition to our own stuff, we deal with something that I abbreviate called OPP. If you're wondering what that is, it's in my life, it stands for other people's problems. Now, I know that a lot of you in here also have a lot of that in your life. I've had people come to me saying, I'm really struggling right now because I'm trying to help this person or that person, and they can't really help themselves, and I'm having to try to help them and all that. That's other people's problems. These are problems that you didn't necessarily even create your own. And those are some of the hardest ones. Aren't they? People that are in our life that we care about, that we feel like we need to help them, and it's very difficult. Sometimes that's harder than when something's happening to yourself. That may be a burden. That may be tiring you out. That may be a heavy burden that you're carrying. It may be some way that you failed. It may be guilt that you're carrying for something that you've done in the past, and you're holding on to it. And you even are telling yourself a story every day about how even some of the issues that you're dealing with in life are because you've brought them on yourself. Jesus invites us to take those things and bring them to him. It says that when he does that, he will give you rest. I'm thinking of this, and the image comes to my mind. Sometimes when you're carrying a heavy load, maybe you take some stuff out of your car or wherever it is, or you're carrying something, and it's getting really, really heavy, and it's getting where you can barely take it anymore, and then someone comes along and says, "Do you need help? Let me take that from you." And how good it feels when all of a sudden you're able to unload that onto someone else. Jesus gives us this invitation. He says, you've been carrying around a lot of weariness and heavy burdens. Will you come to me? I want to give you some rest. You may have walked in here this morning feeling just like that. And maybe you've been feeling that way for a very, very long time. Wouldn't it be great to be able to walk out of here and feel a weight lifted off of your shoulder? Jesus gives us that invitation. He goes on, verse 29. He says, "Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart. The yoke is actually that which connects and pulls something forward. So if you were to go to and hook up a trailer right now to a vehicle or whatever, and it would have a couple of things out there or whatever, but it would be the brace that actually goes onto the hitch, which pulls everything else. Okay? In the Old Testament, it would actually take animals and like horses or whatever that was pulling something, and it would bring it together and take the weight and disperse it properly and make it so that they could actually pull something. Okay, Jesus says, you're carrying a lot and it's very hard for you to pull it and it's been getting very heavy. He says, connect to me and take my yoke upon you and let me then teach you. Now, a lot of people today, unfortunately, don't go to God because they think that God's just sitting there waiting to judge them. He's waiting to lay the hammer down on them for all the mistakes that we've made. We hear what the Bible tells us about how we've sinned and we've come short of the glory of God, and that is true. We've heard what the Bible maybe tells us, that the wages of sin is death, which is separation from God forever, and that is true. But there's another part to that story, and that is that the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ, the Lord. And that is definitely true. Jesus says, look, he says, yes, you have sinned and you're separated from me. All of us have done it, but I came to give you life. He says, I am the way, the truth, and that life. No man can come to the Father but through me. But it's a gift. And the Bible tells us that whoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. It's a shame that we would be afraid to go to the one who has done everything for us. In John verse 17, chapter 3, verse 17, it says that he didn't come into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Saved from the guilt, saved from the sin, saved from the punishment, saved from the shame. Many run from God because they're afraid to be judged. It says in that same passage that he that believes in him is not condemned. It's he that believes not who's condemned already. Why? Because they've not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Jesus says, hey, quit running from the one person, me, who actually came to save you. Who's actually coming and saying, give your burdens to me. Give your weight to me. Lay it on me. By trying to fulfill our wants every other way, we're actually missing the one way that it can be fulfilled. He says, let me teach you. I'm humble, I am gentle at heart. You will find rest for your souls. I think one of the saddest things in life is when people look old way too early. I'm not looking at any of you and saying that this morning. I'm just saying. I've seen a lot of people that way. You just see it. You look at their face, and they just look tired. Things just look heavy. You know, you can see it in a person's eyes. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. The eyes are just like a window to the soul. Isn't that true? You take a look at a person and you can just see in their eyes so much of what they're feeling. Whether there's a joy there, whether there's a peace there, or whether there's just a heaviness there. And I think one of the saddest things for me in life is when I look into a person's eyes and I just see that overwhelming feeling and they just look tired. They just look burdened. But I'll tell you, one of the most exciting things in my life is when I see Jesus come into that person's life and they're changed. And all of a sudden you look at them a week down the line, a month down the line, 3 months down the line. It's like they've gained 10, 15 years of their life back. There's just like a light there. There's just something there that wasn't there before. There's just like their eyes before, everything was just shrunk, everything was down, and all of a sudden it's like a whole different person. When you find rest for your soul. And God is offering it to that. Even if you're a believer and have had a relationship with Him for a long time, maybe you're still trying to find and fulfill your wants in other ways other than Him. He's what satisfies. Verse 30 says, "My yoke, it is easy to bear." A lot of people say, hey, to live for Christ, that's a tough life, right? That Christian life thing, there's so many rules. I've been told about those rules since the very young when I went to church. I went and they made me go to church and, stand up here, sit down here, don't do this, thou shalt not this. There's this commandment, that commandment, all these rules. It's so hard to follow. I can never live up to all that kind of stuff. It's just too heavy to bear. No, that's called religion. Trying to follow a bunch of rules to make ourselves pleasing to God, and hopefully I can jump through enough hoops so that I can get to heaven. That's not the way it works. Jesus did everything that was necessary on the cross. Oh, we try to follow His commands afterwards, but that's not what gets us to heaven. None of us can do that. Religion is hard. A relationship with Jesus, though, is easy. It's the easiest thing there actually is. It's actually what makes life work. It's easy to bear. The burden, He says, I give you, is light. Why? Not because there's not a lot. It's because He's carrying it. Like when you've carried that heavy piece of furniture or something, and you have those two people, and you just can't carry that thing, right? But then have you ever seen that where you're both carrying it, but in reality it's the other person really carrying almost all of it? And some of us have done that. We want to appear helpful, right? So these people, they're carrying and they're straining all this type of thing, and we go over there and we kind of put our hand under, that's our help, right? The reality is we're doing virtually nothing. But we're there. That's really how it is with Jesus. We bring it to Him, the heaviness, the difficulty, everything. In reality, the yoke is easy to bear, and the burden, he gives us His light because He's done all the lifting. He's nailed all of it to the cross, and He's already done it for us. We're just walking through life with Him now. And the rest of what do we want to look at today? 2 Corinthians 9:8. I believe this is one of the last things we're going to look at today. For our wants, for what's going to bring that comfort in life. The Lord is our shepherd, and because of that, I shall not want. 2 Corinthians 9:8. It says, God will generously provide all you need. Now, the one thing I know about God's Word and the one thing I know about Him is He doesn't lie. He tells the truth. God will, notice what it says, how much? Generous, I can't even say it, generously provide all you need. And He knows what we need. says, then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. How does this happen? This happens when we actually go to Him for the source. You know, when I look at this passage, I can't help but think of the other passage where Jesus feeds the 5,000. And you have the disciples, just to give you a little background of the story. So you have this huge crowd, 5,000, more like 15,000 people when you add in women and children. A lot of people. And the disciples are thinking, here's what the disciples are thinking. We want food. We're hungry. So how are we going to do that? What do we have? They look around. The only thing they see in the whole crowd is this boy that has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Okay, so do the math. 5 loaves, 2 fish, 15,000 people. Even if it was 5,000 people, still doesn't work. So they're thinking, we want food, so what are we going to do to get it? Well, the first thing we need to do is get rid of a lot of these people. So they go to Jesus, and they pretend to care. You ever been around people that pretend to care? When in reality, like when James says, they only really care about themselves. They go to Jesus and they say, hey, Jesus, here's the situation in case you're not aware of it. There's a lot of people here. It's getting late in the day. They're probably hungry. I mean, we're concerned, Jesus, that the crowd is probably hungry. So this is what you should probably do. Why don't you send them away so that they can go find a Burger King or something somewhere? You know, go find some place to eat. Sounds pretty noble, right? But of course, what they're thinking is, less of them, more for us. So send them away. You've had that situation at home, right? Or someplace where you're at, where you have a certain amount of food and you want to eat, but there's all these people around and you're like, oh, then I'm going to have to share it with all of them. So I'm just going to wait. I'm hoping they leave soon. Isn't there a way to get rid of them so that we can eat? That's what the disciples were doing. Because they just wanted to have everything for themselves, so they were trying to arrange it. And then Jesus told them something, the last thing that they wanted to hear. He looked at them and he said, no, you give them something to eat. In other words, no, we're not sending them away. You give them something to eat from what you have. And this was the last answer they wanted, so they got very upset, and they looked at him and they said, well, what do you mean let's give us something to eat? We only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. How's that going to feed all these people? See, they were forgetting who they were talking to. And what ended up happening in that story was he commanded them to do it, so they sat everybody down, and they took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they started to pass it out. And not only did they feed everybody, but then they had all kinds of food left over. It was truly a miracle, but that's how God works. And so what this is telling us here is we have wants in our life, and we're often, oh, well, I can't do this God thing. I can't take it to Him. No, what are you talking about? That's way too easy. I just need to, I'll figure it out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep looking for it. I'm going to keep searching for it. I'm going to keep trying to find all these ways that I've been doing, and it's not working. He says, go to God, and He, in His time, will generously provide all you need. You'll always have it, and plenty left over to share with others. Now, the only question left this morning is, will you actually believe Him at His word and take His word for it? That's where the faith comes in. That's where the faith comes in. You know, as we close this message this morning, I've got to tell you this. Only Jesus can, as it says here, fill an empty life. Only Jesus can make you whole. Only Jesus can truly bring you happiness. And only Jesus can truly cleanse your soul. The biggest tragedy this morning would be to walk in here wanting to come face to face with the one who knows you, sees you, and loves you, and to walk away and still try to fulfill those wants and those emptiness on your own. Just the other day, I was talking because I coach girls basketball, and I was talking to them after they played a miserable game. This was the day after they had played a miserable game. A couple days later, the weekend had passed, actually. And I said to them something which relates to what we're doing here this morning, and that's why I'm telling you this story. I said, before the game, we talked about everything that you needed to do which would have caused a good result. And you listened, and you heard it, and then you went out and did what you have always done before and didn't do any of it. And how did that work? Not very well. And I looked at them and I said, here's the problem. I said, it's right before you what you're supposed to do, but you still have in your head that you have to keep doing it the way that you've been doing it. How's that been working for you? And they kind of looked like, not very well. So I asked you the same question this morning because I think it really relates. You might have come in here and you've spent every day of your life up to this point, and you're not happy, and your wants are not fulfilled, and the peace that you need in your heart is not there. And you keep trying, and you've been doing these things, and you have a choice to go out of here and just keep doing it the way you've been doing it. But I've just got to tell you from my heart to yours that the result on how you feel right now, there's no indication that continuing to do it that way is going to change anything. And that's where most people are in life today. So you could react to that going, well, it's just because I'm just not smart. I'm just not good. I'm just not capable. I've just messed things up. That's not the point. We've all done that. Instead of continuing to do the same thing and hoping for a different result, why not take the invitation of the one who's created you and made you, and is the one person that can satisfy your soul, and call upon his name this morning? As we close, let's bow our head and close our eyes. Father God, there may be some here this morning, and they may not even understand everything that we've gone over, but this is what they do know. That there's an unrest in their heart. There's an unrest in their soul.